boys and girls, thank you for joining me once again, where people continue to be wrong on interwebs. Incredible, isn't it? Nonetheless, we'll continue to put people right where they're wrong, and basically that's fucking everywhere. You remember several weeks ago I did a critique of a young bloke named of Varis Ahmed, who is a self-claimed polymath, he says. A polymath, for those that don't know, is someone who has a huge amount of knowledge in a bunch of different areas. Varis Ahmed is not a polymath. He knows exactly dick about fuck, as it turns out. He showed himself up in the video that I critiqued him on. That's why I did it. Yeah, this is a boy with a very, very serious case of Dunning Kruger and an ego problem, among other issues that he's clearly got as well. He's not reasonable, he's not rational, he's not science-based. He has no qualifications of any kind that I've been able to determine or discern for what that's worth. He says there he's not a doctor in the first or second sentence there. We know you're not a doctor, Varis. You're not anything. You have no qualifications at all. What you have is a bunch of opinions based on, well, nothing, as we're about to see once again. So this is Varis's response to my critique, apparently, of several weeks ago. Caveat here, I have not watched this through. I do not know what he's going to say in advance. I have a fair idea, of course, but I'll be discovering it at the same time you are, and I'll be responding to it immediately off the cuff. Because that's what I do here. That's what we do here in the Meat Militia, isn't it, boys and girls? We overcome very bad ideas with much, much better ones. So let's overcome Varis once again, shall we? Off you go, son.
Hello, everybody. Today I am responding to Bart K's video about me. I had made a 10-minute video about...
Oh, by the way, before we get into this, also Varis was invited onto this channel live to debate me. He has declined. So he's bravely turned his tail and fled. Brave, Sir Varis.
Different diets being optimal for different phases of life, and he spent an hour responding to it, offering nothing of value or substance.
That's your opinion, Varis. Anyone who understands the topic at hand will know that what I had to say was correct, full of veracity, utility, and well and truly worthwhile saying. That's why I said it.
No substance. But instead, he just called me names, insulted me, called me an imbecile.
That's not just what I did. I did plenty of that because it's deserved, absolutely. Because basically, son, we are now living in a world where there is a generation of people, your generation, son, who have grown up thinking that your opinion is just as valid as the next person's. It's not, because you have no qualifications at all. You have no underpinning knowledge at all, in fact. You have no reason to assert yourself as being remotely competent to speak publicly about this area. Your opinion is not just as valid as the next person's. I'm sorry, but it just isn't. And also, it's the whole every child wins a prize style of upbringing that children in your generation have been brought up with, son. So that's what's going on there.
Still a buffoon and so on.
You are a buffoon. You've showed that clearly. That's why I called you a buffoon, because you are.
I don't really know how to respond to him because he didn't negate anything that I said.
I absolutely did. I negated everything you had to say, clearly.
Now, this is my response to him, and this video is also going to be my critique of the carnivore diet.
This will be good. It's apparently 37 minutes long.
I had emailed Bart and asked him to have a friendly dialogue and debate about this topic. And
that's right. And I said, absolutely, you're welcome. Here's my calendar link. Here are the conditions that I will undertake a debate with you or anybody else with. And you declined. So stop whinging. Basically, the invitation stands. If you want to come and debate me on my channel, all you need to do is accept those conditions of debate. Those are the rules under which I will undertake a debate, and we're on. Simple as that. As it stands, you have declined. That is your call.
Perhaps both of us could learn something.
I'm not going to learn anything from you, son. You have nothing to teach me of value. whatsoever.
He responded with telling me that I must provide 3 peer-reviewed papers.
No, I said no more than 3. You don't have to supply any at all if you don't want to, but that will make the debate very, very short, won't it? Because it's a debate about what is scientifically demonstrable. And when we're talking about who's right and who's wrong here.
In order to support my stance, or what he called moot, my point.
Well, that's how a debate is run, with a moot. That's what a debate is, Varis. Somebody supplies a moot. I'm asking you to supply one. You supplied some wish-wash. That was 3 or 4 different questions that would needed to have been pared down and refined down to 1 for any one given debate. And you would need to be able to supply not more than 3 references that we could analyse that would support your moot. Simple. You've declined. Okay, that's your call.
My moot point, and I told him that my stance that the carnivore diet is not optimal is not based on peer-reviewed papers.
Right, well, so we're done. Then aren't we? You can't support your moot. We are finished. There is nothing more to discuss. It's your opinion, which is worth exactly nothing. You have no credentials. You have no knowledge, clearly, based on things that you've said. You have no ability to engage rationally with this at all. Nothing you have to say on this is of any value to anybody. We don't want to hear your opinion. If you want to establish a scientific position, if you want to support a moot using properly designed, properly randomized, properly controlled, properly observed metabolic ward lock-in studies with human beings as subjects over multiple decades to talk about hard health outcomes, we'll listen to you, son. Otherwise, it's a very, very short discussion. We've just had it. We're done. You have an opinion. Well, good for you. Is it valid? No.
But on reason, intelligence, and the bodies of work of several nutritional luminaries.
Well, that's not good enough. Those are opinions. They are not proof. They will not support a posit provided as a moot. Everybody's got opinions, just like most people have got assholes. And similarly, most of them are full of shit.
And he responded with cussing me out and flat out refusing the online debate.
No, I didn't. And I'm still not refusing it. The invitation stands. All you need to do is accept the conditions and rules of the debate as I have provided them. Those are the conditions under which I will debate you. Otherwise, no. It's you that is refusing to meet those conditions. Ergo, you are refusing. I'm happy to have it.
Here are the emails. You guys can read the emails for yourself. So in this video, I am going to just simply critique the carnivore diet. As for Bart himself, the man is very obviously not well.
Again, your opinion. Based on what? You've just said on your splash screen not a few minutes ago that you're not a doctor. As it turns out, you're not anything. You have no qualifications of any kind. So what qualifies you to diagnose pathology of any kind? Nothing. And I'm very well, thank you. My health is the best it's been, actually, in my entire life. Every year that I'm on this planet, my health improves still further. I had a bad start, actually. And just about every place I get to is a better place than I was the year before. So wrong, completely wrong.
Okay.
No, it's not okay for you to have an opinion on my health, something about which you know absolutely nothing.
And there's not much more to say about that.
There's plenty more to say, but you don't want to say it. You have declined. That's your call.
Now, I'm going to critique the carnivore diet.
So that's it? Well, that's me taught a lesson, isn't it? You have an opinion about me. I have one about you too, son. Who wins? This is what I'm talking about, kids. Anyway, let's hear about your views on the carnivore diet that you're going to support with absolutely nothing.
In about 4 different ways. First off, I'm going to use the bodies of work, or the body of work of Weston A. Price.
Right, well, there's your credibility gone.
Who was really a nutritional luminary.
No, he wasn't, actually.
perhaps one of the greatest in the world ever.
But perhaps not too.
And his work done on indigenous tribes and studying their diets and how they're immune to dental decay, physical degeneration, etc.
They're not immune to those things.
I'm going to support his work with my own research and findings.
Oh, your own research and findings. Good. So what journal can we find these published works in? These peer-reviewed studies that you've done yourself, Varis? Your works. Okay, good son.
And prove basically that there has never been an indigenous culture that subsisted on a 100% cooked carnivore diet.
So? And you're not going to prove that because you weren't there. Even if you could prove that, so?
So the modern carnivores, you are the first people in the history of the world to pursue such diets.
Not all the people eating a carnivorous diet currently are eating fully cooked. Some are not. There is a range of approaches that people have chosen to take.
Okay, your guys are an experiment.
No, we're not. People have been eating cooked meat in a significant quantity and meat and fat in an almost entirely quantity for at least 1 million years. Probably more like 4.5 million years. And by people, I mean humans and proto-humans that are our descendants or antecedents. Okay?
And there were plenty of high carbohydrate indigenous cultures. Actually, the majority of indigenous cultures.
Just saying actually doesn't prove something is so, Varis. Show us some peer-reviewed literature to support your claim.
Who had very high prevalences of centenarianism or elders living past 100.
Okay, prove that.
Did consume lots of carbohydrates. And
prove it. That's what the peer-reviewed references are for, son. Show us the evidence that what you are claiming is so, or was so. Shall we wait? I don't think we should.
In addition to nose-to-tail animal consumption.
No, not nose to tail at all.
There was never a vegan tribe nor a cooked carnivore tribe, and I'm going to prove that.
No, you're not going to prove that.
First section here. In the second section, I'm going to get into the consequences of cooked meat and how it'll...
So you believe. And you're going to get it wrong.
Your glands, dry them up, and physically degenerate you eventually. Okay?
Nope.
Okay.
False. Rubbish.
And then and I'm going to do that using Audunus Vonderplanet's work.
Right. So there's your credibility gone completely. A dead actor. Good.
On cooked meat, as well as Dr. Francis Pottinger's work on cooked meat. These experiments on cats.
On cats. Now we can see where Joey got his ridiculous fucking nonsense from in his last ridiculous pustulous video. He was taken in by you charlatan. Cats. We're done here, aren't we? Wow.
Cats, which are so important.
No, they're not. Cat studies are not important to human beings. Have you noticed cats and humans are not the same thing?
People have to know about this stuff.
Why?
Part 3 will be about a man named Walter Kempner, who...
The rice diet guy. Okay, so you have absolutely zero credibility, none whatsoever. You are a buffoon from top to bottom. And you're a coward. Because you want to mouth off at me, challenge me to a debate, and then run away with shit in your pants when I say, hey, that's fine, we'll have a debate, here are the rules. Oh, no, I can't do that.
Who basically, in the 30s and 40s, put people on a very high sugar diet, no fat or protein. It was just white rice, table sugar, and fruit juice. And he worked with obese patients who were facing renal failure, and all of them lost dramatic amounts of weight, just like people do on the carnivore diet, put their various diseases into remission, cardiovascular disease, renal failure, et cetera, psoriasis, you name it. And I'm going to show how it's not the carnivore diet. It's not because you're eating meat now that your autoimmune symptoms are going into remission. It's because you're going on an elimination diet.
Nonsense. Absolute, utter nonsense. The reason that a diet that's very poor in fat or a diet that's very poor in carbohydrates has some of these effects short term, which is what these studies were, short term, is because it alleviates the negative effects of the Randall cycle being activated by a mixture of fat and carbohydrates. That is the reason for it. That is the underpinning. That has been shown unequivocally using actual science. Okay? The reason the rice diet is no good, by the way, is because it is vastly, grossly, hugely destitute of nutrition required long-term by human beings. The carnivore diet, not so, because it's not short on those nutrients whatsoever. What's next?
Well, others have gone on elimination diets only doing sugar, and they also lost weight rapidly. And I'll show the pictures and all of this at the
Yes,
end.
for the same reason.
And in summation, I'm going to basically wrap up that the carnivore diet is not an ideal diet.
On the basis that people can eat sugar and lose weight short term, or because of something that was done in cats, or because of what some dead actor said. Oh, clearly I've made a mistake, boys and girls. Clearly I've completely underestimated the sheer geniusness of Varis here. Wow! I hope it gets better.
Great for therapeutic purposes. Many people are metabolically disordered. They have leaky gut and autoimmune symptoms, and so it's great for them. Before the mountaintop, you want optimal health, you're going to have to eat raw food. And I'm going
Nonsense. False.
prove that here.
No, you're not going to prove that because there is no proof for that existing anywhere.
The most universal disease in the world is the decay of the teeth. And unfortunately, we have not known the cause until we've gone to the primitive people to find how they prevent tooth decay. Our difficulty is that we are adding too much white flour and sugar and do not get enough of the foods that carry the minerals and vitamins.
Well, yes. Good.
When the primitive people adopt the food of modern civilization, their teeth decay just as ours do.
Yes, of course they do.
Weston A. Price traveled the world after the First World War, and he studied the last remaining primitive and indigenous tribes. And he sought out to find out why they were immune to dental decay. How
They're not immune.
did they prevent dental caries? He was a dentist. And he found that every single indigenous culture was, in fact, immune to not only dental decay,
No, they're not. Still.
but the types of physical degeneration and malformed development we find in the commercialized world, especially in the modern West, right? And his research is very interesting. The majority of the cultures he did find were eating lots of carbohydrates, but all of them were also eating very cherished animal products, protein and fat. Some people like to isolate to the Maasai and Inuit, which he researched and studied and brought to the forefront of nutrition. So like this carnivore ketogenic community, when they always reference the Maasai and the Inuit.
Some people do. They are just two populations of human beings. So what? Two populations does not make a representative sample of humanity.
It's because of Weston A. Price. He is the one who brought these people to the modern world, introduced their lifestyle, really. And the problem is that those people, the Maasai and the Inuit, are on the fringes of that, of the zero carb or low carb cultures. Not all of them were like that. And sure, the Maasai and the Inuit were healthy, but there's something to keep in mind here. There were no cooked carnivore diets.
You've said that. Now prove it.
The Inuits ate their meat 100% raw, nose to tail, and from the raw blood and the organs, they would obtain the electrolytes necessary.
Yes, so because the Inuits didn't cook their meat, traditionally, does that mean that no humans did? No.
The alkaline mineral reserves, which is needed for optimal health. It was all raw. There's the Nanette, another indigenous tribe that eats nose-to-tail animals. Many of the indigenous tribes that eat raw food, nose-to-tail meat animals, live around the Arctic Circle where it's very cold in the far northern hemisphere. Okay?
Many of them, but not all of them.
When you come south of that, there's not really raw carnivore people, not even cooked carnivore people. Okay?
Wrong.
But raw versus cooked carnivore is a huge difference, and I'm going to explain that in this video.
It's not actually a huge difference.
People may say, well, look at the Maasai. The Maasai, as well as other Nilotic tribes like the Samburu and the Hamar, Afar, they are all on a 60 to 70% raw milk diet, which is a carbohydrate food that has lots of carbohydrates in the form of lactase.
So what?
They drink some blood and they have some meat cooked and raw, a lot cooked actually. But the
So what?
majority of their diet is actually a raw food diet coming from carbohydrates in the form of milk. And the raw milk is important when you're eating cooked meat because, as I will get into later, there's toxic byproducts from cooking meat.
No, there isn't. False.
You cauterize the minerals, the iron becomes a free radical and damages your organs.
False.
Too much of it. And this is all buff.
Show some evidence to support those ridiculous claims. Provide the evidence. Shall we wait? I don't think we will.
With the raw minerals in milk, especially the calcium. I'll get into the science of this later.
No, you won't, I suspect.
Aside from the Nilotics, the Maasai, and the Arctic indigenous people who ate raw carnivore, there were a lot of indigenous tribes that ate raw meat and cooked meat, but were on upwards of 30 to 60, 70% of their macronutrient intake coming from carbohydrates.
So what?
Form of plants, starches, and vegetation.
So what? Humans have evolved over from our earliest, even remotely human-like relatives, over 4.5 million years. We have only consumed any significant amount of plant material at all for about 10,000 of those. And it's been the second worst thing that we ever did as a species, adding those to our diet. The worst thing we ever did nutritionally was to add seed oils. Okay? That's for another day, though.
Examples of all this in Weston A. Price's book were all the Pacific Islander people who were very strong. In my opinion, if you're familiar with Weston A. Price's work, which is amazing, perhaps the greatest contribution to nutrition ever done in the history of the world.
And perhaps not.
The strongest races, from my perspective, and he also commented on it, about how they were built the most splendid physiques. They were so happy. These people were living on islands, but they were on high carbohydrate diets from yams, starches, tubers, carrots, etc., types of
So what?
bananas. But they'd also eat their protein and fat from pork products and fish and so on, hogs on the islands. And you then have like the Loet Shentel Swiss, the isolated Swiss people, Switzerland, who also developed very well, they're very strong. But these people were also on a high carb, high fat, moderate protein diet, which RK
So what?
is so against because of the Randall cycle, but he doesn't really understand the Randall cycle.
Nonsense, son. I've been studying the Randall cycle longer than you have been alive. How dare you? Absolute nonsense. I understand the Randall cycle absolutely, completely, inherently, and inside out. Try again.
Properly, because an individual like that doesn't understand life. And in order to
Wrong, sunshine. Absolute fucking nonsense. You're a boy in short pants. How dare you?
understand nutrition, you actually have to understand life.
Oh, right. So here's a boy in short pants with no qualifications of any kind, but strong opinions, telling a professor of health science specializing in nutrition, among other things, for longer than you've been alive, that I don't understand either nutrition or life. Good. Fucking hilarious. What's next?
That's a fact.
No, it isn't a fact. Nothing that comes out of your mouth is a fact, son. You are a turd. Nothing more.
Right. You have to have some philosophical training.
More years of philosophical training than you have experience of life on this planet, son. How dare you?
Nutrition is not an isolated topic or subject.
Nobody said it was.
But anyway, Loet Shentel Swiss.
So hang on. You're going to tell me about how I don't understand the Randall cycle, aren't you? Did we hear anything about that whatsoever? No? I wonder why not.
Isolated Swiss were living off of sourdough bread and butter, consuming that 2-3 times a day.
So?
And then every third or fourth day, they would kill a cow, and everybody in the community would get beef. Special part of Weston A. Price's work, his book, is his recording of the extreme joy, friendliness, happiness, and the superb characters of all these indigenous people, which in contrast to...
What relevance does that have to nutritional requirements in any way?
To the egos of modern commercial people, such as Bart's.
Yes, egos, says this boy, says this child, says this pathetic, pustulous little turd, this disrespectful, insolent little boy who doesn't know his place. Yes, tell us all about ego, son. Love to hear it.
Severe contrast, and you understand that the modern commercial food has caused not only physical degeneration, but spiritual and psychological degeneration amongst the Western races.
Yes, but so what?
It's a fact.
It's not a fact just because you say it's a fact.
So, aside from the Lower Shantou Swiss, you also then have the...
So how is that relevant to anything? A short segment of a humorous response where I was taking the piss out of someone that desperately deserved it in a humorous fashion that made perfect sense in context. How is that relevant to your video here, Varis, at all, in any way? Pathetic.
People who were in the outer Hebrides Islands in the northwest United Kingdom.
So you're just going to say words and talk about various people around the place and what you believe they do and whatever else. Are you going to establish or prove anything in this video? No.
And these people, again, were eating lots of fish, lots of cod liver oil. They were getting
once again, so what?
fat soluble vitamins and proteins from those animals. But a staple in their diet was also oatmeal. For God's sake, they were eating grains just like the indigenous Swiss. And
so
they were also a very strong race of people, very happy, developed all their wisdom teeth, were immune to physical degeneration.
No, they're not. If they were immune to physical degeneration, they would all live indefinitely. They don't. They die just like the rest of us.
And live long lives. Okay, some indigenous tribes we have come across on my own research. And
your own research. Good. Tell us once again, Varis, what journal your research is published in. Shall we wait for that? Ego, though. Tell us all about ego some more. Good.
So many of them. I'm going to just list several. All the indigenous Amazonians are on a high carbohydrate diet, but they eat local vegetation, local starches, roots, tubers, and they hunt.
What relevance does the behavior currently of anybody in any subpopulation or anywhere around the world right now have to do with what is ideal for a human being? Our current nutritional behavior has developed over the last few generations, for this generation in particular. Our overall approach to nutrition, including having a significant amount of plant material and a significant amount of animal material as well in the diet, our so-called omnivorous behavior, can be traced only about 10,000 years. Prior to that, for the 4.5 million years before that, we ate nothing but the muscle meat, and fat of large ruminant animals, mostly. Those are the facts. That is what can be established with actual anthropology, a branch of actual science, Varis, a thing about which you clearly know nothing whatever. What is all this discussion about? What do one or two groups of people do currently? What has that got to do with anything? What is this supposed to be? It's asserting or achieving in any way other than wasting our time.
Monkey and wild hogs in the forest. people look at this guy. In this documentary, this man is 60 years old. He's climbing up this tree to retrieve a monkey, which he killed with a blowpipe. And these people eat a lot of starches. They eat a lot of carbohydrates.
They're also very, very active comparative to their Western counterparts. They also have totally different lifestyles in every facet. These are the confounding variables that you have totally failed to take account of in any way, because you are totally without any scientific training whatsoever.
As well. My point in all this is that vegans are dogmatic and will push their narrative, as will the carnivores. But both are just opposite sides of the same coin, the diet cults and dogma. Okay?
No, they're not. Because one of those groups of people is wrong about what is optimal for a human being, and one of them is not wrong. That's the deciding factor. That's the differential factor. They're not the same side of anything. No.
Okay. My favorite and the most interesting are the indigenous people of the Caucasus mountain range, Circassians or Adiga, the Abkhaz, Chechens, Dagestanis, and so on. These people are now dominating the world of mixed martial arts. If you're familiar with them. Like,
so what?
The Khabib guy in the UFC.
Only to food and drink.
What is the point of this? What is this supposed to be achieving?
And these people, of course, their pristine mountains, the water, the air, all has significant contributions.
Well, there you go. So anything you have to say about their diet is null and void, because you have not been able to establish causality.
It's the same way it does in Okinawa and in the mountains of Afghanistan.
Oh, no, Okinawa, you say. Do you have any idea what the traditional diet of Okinawans actually is made up of? No.
And China.
Do you understand that the birth and death records in Okinawa are so poor that it's completely impossible to actually even establish the age of most people there, of more than about 80 years of age now? No.
But they are an extremely high carbohydrate diet, are omnivorous, like
So what?
majority of the others.
That doesn't mean that's optimal. That's just what they do.
Eating lots of bread, lots of raw dairy.
So what?
Form of kefir and many other dairy products. Their local vegetation, fruits, nuts, and at dinners, they almost always have wine. I have a documentary on these people on my YouTube channel. You can watch it. I mean,
Yeah, we won't be doing that.
there's one guy celebrating his 95th birthday, and then
How do we know? So we just pop down to the births, deaths, and marriages office to establish that absolutely, shall we?
I think the day after he's going to celebrate his mother's birthday, who's turning like 130.
Again, shall we just pop down the office and get their birth certificate and corroborate that, shall we? Fucking idiot.
And centenarianism is very popular amongst them. There's been a lot of research done on them. And again, they're omnivorous. So my stance, again...
So what? Who's to say that those people who, for a bunch of reasons, may or may not be living to 100 years of age, wouldn't live even longer if their diet was optimized as one of the factors affecting their longevity, one of the milieu of factors affecting their longevity? It's a rich tapestry that can't be unpicked. A scientist understands this, Varis. A scientist also understands the limits of his or her own level of competence. That's where you fall down, that and your ego problem.
And this is just the first part to debunk the whole carnivore myth.
What do you mean the carnivore myth? There is no myth. Human beings were carnivores for all of our history except the last 10,000 years when we added in plant material, and it was one of the worst things we ever did.
Vegans are going to tell you, look at our ancestors, they were vegans, and as are the
The
carnivores.
vegans don't understand the anthropology or the science if they're going to claim that human beings were vegans at any time except more than 5.5 million years ago, after which we decided, sod that, came down from the trees and started eating animals almost exclusively. Okay?
The fact of the matter is you're not going to find a carnivore diet.
So what? Human beings have been cooking meat, and proto-humans as well, have been cooking meat for over 1 million years. That's what the anthropological evidence tells us. That is a fact. There is nothing unnatural about cooking meat. It's not a modern thing. It's not something that we're not adapted to. We've been doing this 1 million years. Okay? Move on.
Cooked carnivore indigenous tribe. It doesn't exist. Sure, there's people who ate cooked meat,
So what? What's your point?
but they supplemented with a lot of vegetation or raw dairy. Now,
So?
I
You're talking about what a few people did well within the last 10,000 years. The period of time when human nutrition has been completely turned on its head by idiocy. It's a pretty much irrelevant period.
want to get into.
So if that was your first point, what was it? There are a lot of people who eat carbohydrates. We knew that, Varis. That's not news to us. We understand there are a lot of people who choose to eat carbohydrates. So fucking what? That doesn't mean that's optimal. And neither does it prove that eating all meat isn't optimal, and neither does it say anything about cooking meat or not. Nothing whatever. It was waffle. Mindless waffle. What is next?
And again, just a side note here. People like Bart insist that we have no need for carbohydrates.
We don't. I say that because it is a physiological fact. It is a demonstrated fact. You cannot argue with scientific facts on this. They have been established. There are no required carbohydrates in the human diet. None at all.
Well, why can we store carbohydrates as muscle glycogen? If you're
What's that got to do with the price of fish in China? How does that impact whether or not we need to consume carbohydrates in our diet? It doesn't. At all.
the individual, you can store up to 1,500, 2,000 calories, depending on how much.
Calories are heat, Varis. They are a measurement of the change in heat of a water bath around a bomb calorimeter. That is all they are. You cannot store heat in your body of that kind. You don't even understand basic thermodynamics, muscle energetics, cellular energetics, biochemistry, any of it. First principles, clearly. What point do you think you're making here? Oh, humans have glycogen in our muscles, so therefore we need to eat glycogen? No. Not at all. Or eat glucose? No.
Which muscle you have as glycogen. Why
So what?
do we have the ability to store liver glycogen?
Because we need a store of glycogen to subserve the blood with glucose so that the tissues in our bodies that require glucose to function can have some glucose with which to function. Does that mean we need to consume glucose? Still no. Gluconeogenesis, son. Fuck me.
Carbohydrates. Why do all of our cells have the ability to burn glucose fuel?
They don't. They don't burn anything, son. Burning is not what we do with our food.
As well as fatty acids. Why do we have that ability?
We have the ability to oxidize carbohydrate in order to produce energy. Yes. Does that mean we require the consumption of carbohydrates in our diet? Still, no. Buffhead.
Why do we produce amylase enzyme in our
Because there's no negative selection pressure to knock that out. And in fact, it's useful. It's one of the reasons that humans have been able to survive things that other species did not. Because we can subsist on non-ideal food sources for a period of time. What is your point besides still no point?
saliva and through our pancreas, which is solely designed to digest starch.
No, it isn't. Our pancreas is solely designed to digest starches. No, you clearly don't know anything about pancreas either. Okay, what's next?
Why are we able to host bacterial cultures in our colon, which ferment raw plant fibers and synthesize fatty acids, vitamins, and minerals for our well-being? Why do we have these abilities, this physiological?
What does any of that have to do with whether or not we require the consumption of carbohydrates to survive or to thrive even? None of those things have any impact on the fact that the exact dietary requirement for carbohydrate is not 1 single gram ever. You lose, Varis, again.
Abilities to assimilate nutrition from plant foods. And I'm not saying go vegan here, but we obviously are suited for plant foods as well.
No, we're not, clearly. Go and learn about anti-nutrients, plant toxins, the pro-inflammatory nature of all of these things, the vastly, hugely damaging effects of fiber in the colon, etc., etc., etc. No, we are not well adapted to plant consumption at all. We are very, very poorly adapted to plant consumption, as opposed to our adaptations for meat consumption, which are absolutely stunningly good in comparison.
Why are all these previously mentioned indigenous cultures on fairly high carbohydrate diets, but
who cares what they choose to do now, these days? What has that got to do with what is the best optimal diet for a human being? Why would you imagine that an indigenous culture would necessarily have it right? Was it not an indigenous culture originally that decided it would be a good idea to plant fields and fields and fields of grasses so that we can live off the seeds of those instead of having to hunt those pesky animals that run away from us? Yes, it was. Were they right to do that? No, they weren't. That was a mistake, a huge mistake. What is your point still?
immune to dental decay and physical
They are not immune to physical decay and to dental decay and all of that. They're not immune to any of those things. They still die, just like other people.
metabolic disorder, the way that
They are not immune to metabolic disorder. Feed any of these people a modern Western diet and they will just as surely suffer all those same problems.
carnivores of today or modern people with all the autoimmune disorders are not. The reason is because it's not the carbohydrates which causes the physical degeneration of modern people or Western populaces. It was the degeneracy, the hedonism, the alcohol, the drugs, Adderall you took through school. It was the high fructose corn syrup.
So speculation, all speculations. Some of them I would agree with. Some of them absolutely not. But you're supplying absolutely no evidence of any kind to support any of your assertions here.
It's fortified in every single package of processed food. It was the glyphosate sprayed on all of the grains. It was
How do you know? Show me some support for that in the literature, peer-reviewed scientific literature, anywhere at all.
The fact that the grains were not prepared properly, fermented properly in a traditional manner. It was the antibiotics you were given. It was the...
Prove any of these claims. Some of them I would agree with have had an impact. Absolutely. But none of them absolve carbohydrates as a contraindicated part of the human diet in terms of optimal health and longevity.
The junk food, for God's sake, there's a celebration of Halloween where every year kids go get pillow bags of candy and then eat that for weeks on end. It was all of the junk food.
Again, speculation.
Candies, the chips, the crackers, etc., which caused you to become metabolically deranged. They damaged the organ.
So what part of those candies, chips, etc., was it that was causing the problem virus? Was it the carbohydrate part of them, do you think? Or the fat part? Or was it the mixture of carbohydrates and fats which activates the Randall cycle? Perhaps. I don't know. I don't understand the Randall cycle at all, having studied it for longer than you've been alive.
Organs damage the pancreas and damage the gut. And thus, you're now at a point in life where you cannot tolerate even a gram of sugar. But guess what? Healthy people in isolated and indigenous cultures can tolerate a lot of carbohydrates because they're real plant foods.
They're not foods. And people do have a tolerance for the toxic nature of plant material, absolutely. Indigenous cultures have also often worked out means to prepare these foods in a way that is less problematic, inherently, sure. None of this establishes a posit in any way that a carnivore diet is not ideal. That's your posit, that's your moot, that it's not ideal. You have not established it. Still, halfway through your video, you haven't even scratched the surface on it. You haven't even addressed the topic at hand, which is a carnivore diet optimal for human beings? Let's see if he gets any better.
The point here being is that it wasn't carrots, potatoes, white rice, yams, other types of starches and roots and tubers that caused your metabolic disorder.
Who said they were? Where'd you get that from? Who said that?
It was the decades of all the other stuff, the pseudo carbohydrates, which are the staple of your diets, which caused this.
They're not pseudo carbohydrates, they are carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are contraindicated in the human diet over a certain individual tolerance level.
Guy used to drink a ton of alcohol.
Not a ton, a fair bit, but not a ton. A ton is 1,000 kilograms, Greg.
So you see how literal this guy is. And
now let me go into the...
What was the point of that, Varis? We've all seen the Greg douchebag exchange, which I won. Absolutely hands down. Everybody knows it. Anyone with more than 3 brain cells. How does that relate in any way whatsoever to the point at hand? Pathetic.
Detrimental effects of cooked meat.
This will be good.
Rather than use research papers, which you can find plenty out there, and a lot of them are bullshit.
So rather than use research papers, what we're going to hear is your opinion. Okay.
I don't like to use them because you can use any research paper to prove anything, and then someone else can negate that with another research paper. So I'd rather just use the bodies of work.
No, that's not true. You can interpret a paper any way you choose to interpret it. However, papers have an ability to either establish a posit, any given posit, or not. It's a very clear decision that is made on the basis. You see, you need to understand science, Varis. That's what the problem is here. A paper sets forth an hypothesis, and then it refutes that hypothesis, or it accepts that hypothesis. It's the only 2 outcomes of a paper. It's not hard to understand.
Certain nutritional luminaries who put their life into and dedicated their life into their research, and who are far more trustworthy than just some vague research lab somewhere that God knows who funded. Okay, the negative effects of cooked meat.
Okay, let's go. So once again, we're going to get the opinion of a dead actor.
Why raw meat is better than cooked meat? Very basic question. Great question.
Well, when you cook anything, you begin destroying, depending upon the temperature, you begin destroying nutrients.
So what? is there still sufficient nutrient in that food once it's cooked to support life, longevity, robustness of health and well-being? Yes, there is. We're done.
That's in any food, not just meat. But we digest meat and handle meat the best in my experiments with humans, of course.
What experiments are those? What peer-reviewed publications are you talking about? Because just some dead actor's experiment is not good enough, son.
And dogs and cats.
Dogs and cats. Good.
You cook anything about above 105 degrees or meat above 105 degrees, you break down the enzymatic.
It's really, really obvious now, having watched this, where some of that ridiculous, rancid, pustulous garbage that came out of Joey Schwartz's mouth in his last video have come from. He is mindlessly regurgitating what this absolute arse trumpet fuck splat here Varis has had to say. Very, very disappointing, Joey. My estimation of you had dropped significantly on the basis of your last video. Now it's halved even again. Wow. Son.
Activity. Now, a lot of people think enzymes are alive. They are not alive. No more than...
Nobody thinks enzymes are alive. Not anyone that knows anything about enzymes. Enzymes are a protein encoded for by some DNA.
Virus is alive. They are protein structures to help tear down, build up, or reassemble nutrients. And they can be used in many ways, but they are not alive. But those are altered and cauterized at the beginning about 105 degrees. For some nutrients, it's even lower. Like for natural phosphorus, the cauterization process begins at 98 degrees. And by the time it hits 110, phosphorus is completely altered. That is when they go to check and see if something's been properly, so-called properly pasteurized, they look to the phosphorus.
Okay. And how is it altered? And does that make it somehow unusable? Because it's still phosphorus, isn't it? Because phosphorus is an elemental substance.
To identify whether the temperature has reached at least 141 degrees. Other factors like vitamins will be destroyed at about 122 degrees.
Not true. Destroyed, you say? That means there's none left. Well, if that was the case, then I should have died of scurvy about, 6 weeks short of 8 years ago. I'm still alive. No scurvy or any sign of scurvy. So that must be false. Can we move on?
126 absolutely altered in.
But absolutely. I mean, get your nutritional advice from dead actors anytime you like. Absolutely.
Able to be utilized properly. And then the fats, they break down into lipid peroxides. The proteins break down into heterocyclic amines, and any kind of carbohydrates will be broken down into acrylamides. And those are just 3 of the toxins that are formed from cooking foods. And you've got 30.
So show me some peer-reviewed experimental evidence in human beings over multiple decades under adequate control and all of those other things that you need in an experimental study to prove cause and effect. That shows an effect on health, outcomes, or longevity in human beings of cooking food or not. Shall we wait? There are no such studies. So it's a hypothetical problem. Shall we move on?
2 that have been identified from cooking foods. So the higher the temperature, the greater the byproduct toxins that are formed. And the 3 that I just named are all labeled as carcinogens.
By whom? On the basis of what experiments to establish the factuality of that claim?
When you cook meat, you destroy majority of the vitamins and
Nonsense.
the minerals.
Nonsense.
Destroy the hormones.
Nonsense.
Oxygen is in every single raw food.
Nonsense. Rubbish. I eat a diet consisting of basically nothing except the cooked muscle meat of large ruminant animals. I've done that with very little deviation from that for over 8 years now. Just over 8 years. How long should I wait for this destitution, this problem, to manifest itself in some way? There is no problem with cooking all your food. It's fine. Clearly, obviously. Should we move on?
Destroy the enzymes and bacteria.
What, enzymes? You don't need enzymes in food. You make the enzymes you need yourself to facilitate metabolic process.
And this creates it, or turns into a subpar food. And every single
No, it doesn't. There's nothing subpar about it. It's perfectly adequate.
organism in nature requires a 100% raw food diet
Nonsense.
in order to live and thrive optimally.
Except humans, because we've evolved down different lines to every other animal. We've been cooking our meat for 1 million years.
We look into the work of Dr. Francis Pottinger.
Cats. Cat studies. Good. Have you noticed cats haven't been cooking their food over fires for 1 million years?
His research on cats, and it's a lot of work, but I'm going to give a summary of it.
Why? They are cats. We aren't. I just don't understand, though. That's the problem. I'm the problem here.
He did research on 900 cats over a span of 10 years.
Yes, cats. Good. Next time I'm talking to a cat about its nutritional requirements, I'll be sure to make sure that that cat has read Pottinger's.
And he basically divided the cats into
Who gives a rip-roaring fuck what he did with the cats? They are cats, you idiot. Why are we wasting time on this?
separate groups, gave them specific diets for multiple generations, and then observed the results there.
I mean, isn't it really obvious that Joey's video is just a rehash of this nonsense? He's been impressed by this garbage. He's been sucked in, exactly the way he was sucked in by the absolute cocksplat known as Spherier, spelt with a 3, otherwise known as Guartus, Mr. Sungazer, Mr. Drinking my girlfriend's menses is cool and hip, and if you eat any cooked meat, you are a fucking slave. That guy. Wow, Joey. Get a clue, son, honestly. The disappointment is an understatement here. Wow.
They're up.
Study, a most interesting development emerged. The cooked meat cats were unable to successfully reproduce after the 3rd generation.
Yes, because cats haven't evolved eating cooked meat. Possibly a taurine issue.
Most were void of sexual interests, and those that had attempted to mate could only produce stillborn litters. On the other hand, the raw meat animals continued to reproduce healthy offspring generation.
Goodness me, it's almost as if they've evolved eating raw meat and we haven't. Fuck me, really?
After generation. The notion that specific nutritional factors in food may be destroyed by heat processing is obviously not far-fetched.
Well, given that we have been doing this for over 1 million years, don't you think we've had more than sufficient time to adjust our genes, or to have our genes adjusted by natural selection pressures, to accommodate that?
In short, cats which were fed raw meat.
Yes, we heard the man. It's still completely irrelevant to human beings.
Only, reproduced homogeneously.
This is a bloke who wants to be taken seriously as someone who knows more about this than I do. This is a bloke that wants to cast aspersions at me, saying it's me that doesn't understand the world in some way. And then he turns around and says, cats can't do well on cooked meat, so therefore that must apply to human beings. Are you serious, sunshine? Are you taking the piss? Are you having a laugh? Is that what it is? We are. We think it's fucking hilarious, don't we, boys and girls?
All the litter looked exactly the same, developed homogeneously. All of them developed well, strong, robust, were very playful in nature. The male cats resembled virile qualities.
Oh, will you fuck off? Honestly, son, do you have anything of value to add to society or this discussion about nutrition in any way? If so, what is it? Because this isn't it.
Female cats resembled feminine qualities, and they succeeded efficiently and successfully generation after generation without any diseases. In contrast, the cats which were fed 100% cooked
So fucking what?
meat, in the first generation developed allergies and fatigue.
Yeah, it's almost like it's an unnatural diet for a cat to eat cooked meat. Yes, we know.
Second generation, they were not born homogeneously. They were born in different sizes, some short, some tall, and all of them failed to develop optimal development. Okay, so they would have certain teeth not growing properly, stunted bone development, and all of them had allergies. All of them were
You said that.
extremely lethargic and fatigued, and had many allergies and
You said that.
many sicknesses.
You said that too. And it's still irrelevant.
The male cats resembled female cats. They were tired and lazy all the time. The
You
female
said that. Fuck. Brain fog much?
cats resembled male cats. They were basically scratchy and fighting a lot. They were not playful. In the third generation of cooked food cats, all of them were born with malformities,
Malformities? Goodness.
types of physical retardation. Many were born blind,
Retardation, you say?
and they were completely infertile. And they were basically dead.
Yes, we heard the man.
They couldn't really move at all. And he kept repeating these experiments, and he concluded that there's nutrition in raw food that is needed to develop cats optimally.
That's right, cats. That's the key word there. Did you see that? No? Okay.
Now, people may say, well, we're not cats or
There you go.
lions. We don't need 100% raw meat.
There you go. So you've just wasted our time. And now you're admitting it, that you've just wasted our time. Good.
Okay, that's kind of horse shit.
No, it's not kind of horse shit at all. Do you notice we're not cats? I mean, here's a guy that thinks I have a problem with reality, and he doesn't understand that we are not cats. Yes, clearly it's me that has a problem with reality, obviously.
The ones who eat 100% meat diets are raw. And I showed those, the indigenous Thanet and the indigenous Inuit or Eskimo and all the Arctic tribes in the far northern hemisphere.
It's pretty hard to set a fire up there. They can do it, but it's not necessarily convenient or necessary. So no reason they shouldn't eat them raw. But human beings have been cooking their meat for over 1 million years.
Are raw meat eaters. Okay? And
Some of them, you've just given us a couple of examples, fine. A couple of examples does not represent humanity.
And another interesting addition to this is there's a channel called More Plates, More Dates.
Oh God, Derek, you really are an absolute buffoon, aren't you, son? Now you're going to laud Derek from More Plates, More Dates as someone that knows dick about fuck? Come on.
Over 1 million subscribers.
So what? That doesn't mean that you know what you're talking about. It means that there are people who are stupid enough to believe that what you have to say is worth listening to for any reason.
Is basically a hormonal specialist.
No, he's fucking not. At all. The boy has no fucking qualifications to speak of at all. Just like you, son. God's sake.
Very cool channel.
No, it's not. It's fucking pustulous nonsense, all of it.
And he did his analysis of people on the carnivore diet and their blood work. There are several individuals who...
No, he didn't. At all. He looked at some isolated tests taken on one occasion from selected people, so we're told.
published their blood work results publicly after being on the carnivore diet for some time. He does his own analysis of them individually. And
yeah, but he's not qualified to do so. So who cares what he had to say?
Common thread amongst all of them is an extreme decrease in androgenic hormones. And what that means, if you're familiar...
Not so, in fact. It's been shown time and again that these one-off tests are often inaccurate and often are taken at a time for some reason when the T is low. None of these individuals actually have low T. One of the individuals you're talking about is Sean Baker, for Christ's sake. 6'5", 250 pounds, and the holder of 2 fucking separate world records for physically demanding tasks. Yes, of course Sean Baker has got low testosterone. You absolute fucking clown. Yes, it's me that has a problem with reality. Of course. Obviously.
Familiar with my work is that the glands are atrophying. The glands are drying up. For us young, strong, healthy people.
Yeah, right.
When we go on this kind of a diet, we notice and sense the negative consequences of it quickly, within a year or two. If you're an old individual like Bart K.
How old is old, son? How old is that?
And you can tell that the man is very sick. He's 50 years old.
No, he's not very sick. My health is the best it's ever been in my entire life. You fucking insolent little cunt. My health is in great shape compared to what it was when I was younger. Much better shape, actually.
Look at him. And he admits he's a self-designated, he acknowledges he's a hedonist.
So?
And drinks many cups of coffee a day.
Used to. Now it's much less. Again, you've missed what I used to do as opposed to what I was doing even up until the 1st of January this year. And now it's a different story again. But so what?
And he sits on a video game chair and cusses at people.
Yes, that's all I do. My entire life is sit on a video game chair, so what, and cuss at people. That's all I do, yes. Again, clearly it's me that has a problem with reality. Good.
People like that who just want to put their autoimmune symptoms into remission, of course it's a
I don't have any autoimmune symptoms. At all, none.
Diet. Just eat meat and drink coffee. But it is by no means the mountaintop. Us younger people, or us people who want to experience higher levels of health.
Higher than what?
We're not going to experience it on a cooked meat diet.
You don't know that. You don't know dick about fuck, son. You're an imbecile. You're an ignorant imbecile. Wow.
Just ridiculous. Come on.
Yeah, what's ridiculous is this clown thinking he knows dick about fuck. He clearly doesn't.
There's a lot of consequences to eating all of this cooked meat.
No, there isn't.
Now, if the solution, as Bart K insists, is just to eat cooked meat,
I didn't say that. That is a false claim. I said that is what I choose to do. And it works for me perfectly well. There is no evidence that I should do anything different from that whatsoever, and so I'm not going to.
Eat cooked muscle meat. It's pretty mind-blowing that the wise sages and masters of traditional Ayurvedic Indian medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, both which have a 5,000...
None of which I have any respect for whatsoever. And why should I? That gives them no credibility of any kind.
Year history, traditional Iranian medicine, which has about a 3,500-year history.
So?
Greek medicine, which has a 3,000-year history.
So?
Then nobody could figure it out. Just eat cooked meat and thrive. Really? But Bart K figured it out?
No. It wasn't me that figured that out. And neither did I say just eat cooked meat. I said that's what I do. You're not even capable of telling the truth or accurately representing what was said by whom and why. You are a desperate, pathetic child attempting to save face from the, frankly, scolding, ass spanking that you received from me several weeks ago, and quite rightly so, because you showed yourself to be an absolute imbecile and a loon of the highest order with a very, very serious ego problem, frankly, son, you got what you deserved. Suck it up. Nothing you've had to say in this video has negated anything I had to say on any point whatsoever. And most of what you've had to say is demonstrably false, incorrect, misleading at best, and an outright lie at worst. You have no value. There is nothing that you can add to this discussion whatsoever. And I think you realize that. That's why you have declined to have a discussion with me, because you know I will tear you to pieces in a discussion with ease. What's next?
In all of these traditional systems, they understood that the body is composed of multiple elements. In Europe, it was understood as the humors. In India, it was understood as different constitutions like Vita Pata. In China, it was understood as different elements. And I'll just use the Chinese system because it's very relatable. Fire, air, earth, water. We're composed of different elements in the body. And disease...
No, we're composed of matter, in fact. It has been shown. We know what we are composed of. It is matter.
Was thought of to be a result of deficiency of certain nutrition or excessive toxicity from certain foods, which imbalanced the elements or humors or fluids in the body.
No, it's nothing to do with that. The imbalances are challenges to the normal operation of our organ systems, which are physical things made of matter, nothing to do with elements whatsoever.
So something like a cooked meat diet, where cooked meat is consumed excessively, imbalances the water element.
No, it doesn't, though, at all.
Dries it up because of excessive fire or heat.
No, it doesn't whatsoever. I'm not eating fire, neither am I eating heat. I'm eating meat. That does not disturb my fluid balance in any way.
Or iron, okay, or cooked protein. And this causes the kidneys to dry up, the glands.
No, it doesn't. My kidneys have not dried up at all. My kidney function is perfect. My urinary system works perfectly. Jobs are good in.
To dry up, and the bone marrow to dry up.
No, hasn't happened either. Because if your bone marrow dries up, you die. If your kidneys dry up, you die. I haven't died. Okay?
Because you're imbalancing the humors.
No, my humors are fine. They're not imbalanced at all.
Balancing the elements.
No. Wood, water, metal, earth, fire. No. All of those organ systems are made of flesh. Proteins, fats, carbohydrates, minerals. Okay? They're not made of wood, they're not made of fire, they're not made of earth, they're not made of metal or water. Well, metal ions are involved, let's be honest. Sure. Electrolytes. Wow. It's me that has a problem with reality, though, remember?
So, cooked meat has a lot of toxic byproducts.
No, it doesn't.
And
no more than the next sort of food. Not at all.
You need to buffer those toxic byproducts with alkaline reserve minerals.
Nonsense. Absolute fucking nonsense. Rubbish.
You'll only find in raw dairy or in very healthy carbohydrates that are planted.
There are no such thing as really healthy carbohydrates.
Grown in very rich soil.
Okay. Nonsense. Once again, just nonsense.
Okay? This is why you find many indigenous cultures eating either raw dairy or a lot of carbohydrates. If you only eat cooked meat, it's going to screw you up.
Nonsense. Absolute fucking nonsense. Rubbish.
Now, when Dr. Francis Pottinger dissected his cats...
His cats? Yes. Back to the cats again.
To find out why they were degenerating from the cooked meat. He found...
Because they're not evolved for eating cooked meat. Probably a taurine issue more than anything else.
found that in contrast to the raw meat cats who had very strong, healthy glands, the cooked meat cats had very dried and atrophied glands.
Yes, probably a taurine issue more than anything else.
Thyroid, the adrenal gland, the gonads are all dried and atrophied. And the reason
they weren't dried, because if they were dried, those cats would have died immediately.
For this is because first off, you need nutrition from raw food.
No, we don't.
To supply these glands with the nutrition needed.
Cats do, we don't.
For them to sustain function. But further, when you cook a food, like meat especially, it cauterizes and dries up the minerals and the iron inside there.
It does no such thing. Not at all. There is perfectly sufficient nutrition in cooked meat. Job's a good one.
To iron oxide, turns into a metal.
No, what do you mean it turns into a metal? For goodness sake, you don't even understand basic chemistry, let alone basic physics or basic reality 101. Wow! Iron oxide is not a metal. Jesus Christ.
When you consume this in excess and bring it into the body, it will dry out the glands. Okay?
Still no. Just repeating the same ridiculous fucking nonsense again does not make it correct. It's still wrong.
It's going to dry out the body.
And no.
This was not only his conclusion, it's Artemis Vonderplanet's conclusion.
For cats, maybe. We're not cats, still.
And very important today when we look at the objective anecdotal evidence on YouTube.
The objective anecdotal evidence. Just anecdotes, boys and girls. No actual evidence, just anecdotes. That's all it's got, you know. Anecdotes.
Of young, healthy people trying out this carnivore diet. In the beginning, they seem to love it, but long term, they all fail and suffer. For example, a great example of this, and I appreciate all these people being so public about it, because it's for the benefit of us all. Frank Tofano says it ruined his health.
Yeah, he ate too many organs. He put too many organs in his mouth is what he did. Yes, that's what happened to Frankie. Frankie the Wanky. Frankie. Tough anus. Also, he never really was a carnivore and he did it wrong. Yeah, pretty much. Well, another actor whose sole interest was in public notoriety, actually, and not someone that we can be trusted to provide good or relevant information, actually.
For several years on the diet. And again, the reasoning was iron toxicity, iron overload.
That's the reason he gave. And the reason why he may have had a problem, which was never established or proved in any way, was because of his consumption of large amounts of organ meats. Pretty much. Wrong thing to do. Mistake.
Okay. There was Paul Saladino.
Another idiot. Same problem. Far too many organs, not enough protein for him, for what he needed, ran into a problem with his electrolytes. What a shock. Didn't shock me at all.
Paul Saladino admits he went into burnout because of this. And I'll explain more.
Because of the damage done to him by the toxic organs that he was consuming, combined with his inappropriate and insufficient intake of protein for his needs. Okay?
More about that later, but look at this clip of Paul Saladino.
Because
talking to Georgie Dumkoff, a Rapetian, and thus another complete waste of oxygen with no knowledge on anything at all. That's what happens when you pour sugar down your neck, boys and girls.
I'm sure you may know some of my history. I think we have similar histories in trying ketogenic, low-carb diets and crashing and burning. And so for a long time, when I wrote my book about the carnivore diet, I mean, Danny Roddy, your friend, emailed me and said, when you come around to carbs, let me know. So shout out to
Danny Roddy, for God's sake. Another complete turd with not 1 minute of actual academic training under his belt. Another buffoon of the highest order. Wow.
Danny Roddy, that I came around to carbs. But in the beginning,
Okay, then there was a famous channel, a good channel called the Strong Sisters, and you can watch this clip of them.
Both friends and acolytes, if you like, of Paul Saladino, who would obviously copy anything Paul did. Do your fucking research, Varis, for God's sake. These girls were eating too much fucking organ meat. Not enough protein, and certainly not enough. In fact, they were not eating enough. They were both eating disordered, frankly.
Them reporting they went into blowout as well, lost their menstruation, and they
not enough fat, not enough protein, too much organ meat. Easy.
Thousands of women report back to them that they were losing their menstruation on this carnivore diet.
Not enough fat.
Look at this clip.
Not talking about it was a disservice to my community, and I still kind of regret holding that inside for a long time, because we would get a ton of messages from women being like, "Hey, I lost my cycle. What can I do?" And like, we didn't know how to answer those questions because we didn't have our cycles, and it started to feel really weird.
And because you're not qualified to give anybody nutrition advice under any circumstances, Ashley Armstrong. You have no training in human physiology, human nutritional needs. About the same amount as Sarah Kleiner's got. None. Now, I have a lot more respect for Sarah than I do for you, because she's much older. She has much more life experience than you do. She's been around this thing a lot longer as well than you have. But I still don't agree with everything Sarah has to say. And I would not suggest that Sarah Kleiner is competent or qualified to give nutritional advice. She's not. Sorry about that.
And it was uncomfortable. I'm sure you get those messages.
Now, I want to say something about coffee. If you observe the majority of these carnivore influencers, they all consume coffee.
No, not all of them. Not all of them at all.
Coffee is a drug.
Yes, it is.
A video about why coffee is a drug.
You don't need to. Everybody knows it's a drug.
I do it from the traditional Chinese medicine perspective.
Oh, fuck's sake. Fixated at all, are we?
You can go watch that yourself, okay?
No, we won't be doing that.
But the reason why this cooked carnivore cult need coffee is because they, again, have dried up glands.
No, we don't. We don't have dried up glands at all. False. And it's not a cult, and it's not a fad. Human beings have been cooking their meat for over 1 million fucking years, Varis. For fuck's sake, you pathetic child.
Cannot produce any energy. Thus, they need coffee to constantly whip their adrenal glands, expel stem cells from their bone marrow, and produce adrenaline and cortisol in order to have energy and mental function.
Absolute fucking nonsense.
A good diet would allow you to not require or necessitate coffee.
Nobody requires coffee. It's a choice that a lot of people make to drink coffee. It's a recreational drug. It's an abuse. There's no place for it in the diet. It's not indicated, and I've never said otherwise. Okay? I've also recently given up coffee because it has many negative effects. And that's about me, and this is not really about me.
Would not need coffee on a raw food diet,
You don't need coffee on any diet. Coffee is not a requirement.
Which advocate for either a raw living food vegan diet or a raw primal diet, such as the one espoused by Augenis Vonderplank.
A dead actor.
They need coffee for energy, but they also need coffee for their bowel movements. The way coffee.
No, we don't. Not at all. Another completely false, erroneous, nonsensical statement from an idiot.
Causes bowel movements. Let me explain this. When someone shits themselves because they get really scared, they pump a lot of adrenaline and cortisol. And what the body does is that it diverts energy and resources to the muscles and brain so that it can fight or flee. And it opens up the intestinal bowels so that the organism can release its shit and not expend energy trying to digest it. Instead, harness those energetic resources for fleeing. Well,
that has nothing to do with normal bowel function in people who are not being chased by predators. Nothing whatever.
Body cannot differentiate between a mental fear, physical stress and fear, or a biochemical stress or fear, such as from the drug coffee and the caffeine content.
The physiological responses to drinking a cup of coffee or several cups of coffee and being chased by a lion are not remotely fucking similar, you idiot. You complete buffhead. Not remotely similar.
And when you consume this caffeine, it again scares the body because it's a
No, it fucking doesn't scare the body.
biochemical stressor.
Bodies don't scare.
Individuals produce a lot of adrenaline and cortisol. The body shits itself.
No, it doesn't. Rubbish.
It's scared and it says, what the hell's going on? Let me flee from whatever's poisoning me here. This is actually how these carnivores who are so lethargic and fatigued,
they're not
shitting themselves. This is how they get through life. Some coffee, but if you're a young individual, want to be healthy.
Okay, so just yet more fucking nonsensical, opinionated garbage without any fucking support whatsoever from science or anything that even makes any fucking sense. Just noise from a clown, from a little boy. That's all we've got here.
It's strong. You don't want to be drinking coffee and subsisting on cooked meat. That's ridiculous. The funny part here is that people like Bart, a lot of these carnivore influencers, they're not even digesting a lot of their fat because coffee.
Oh my God, are you fucking serious? Now you want to claim to be able to know about my physiological function. You've never met me, son. You wouldn't fucking know what I am and am not digesting. You don't even know for a fact what I am and am not eating. You also can't even accurately portray what it is I have said. So why would we listen to any of your fucking ridiculous nonsense here? How does that make any fucking sense?
Caffeine or coffee, as well as caffeine from other sources such as tea, has a chemical inside of there. And here are two papers which you can look into further yourself, but there is a chemical inside there which inhibits the body from being able to produce lipase, which is a fat digesting enzyme. So these people are not even digesting their fats. They're shitting it out.
No, I'm not. Not at all. False. Completely false.
Because the coffee is scaring the shit out of them, literally.
False again.
It's scaring the shit out of them.
No, false.
And they can't even digest their fats. Okay, so
yes, I can. Perfectly well.
They're not expending really anything on digestion. These people are actually on a coffee diet, maybe some protein that they're getting from their food. Now, let me go further. And let me talk about Walter Kemp.
But why not go further? Why not go completely off the fucking planet? Well, you already did, really. But why not go to a completely different fucking solar system or a different reality altogether? Well, you've already done that too. Stunning. Unfucking believable.
This man, in the earlier part of the 20th century, put people on high sugar diets at Duke University.
Yes, we know. For a short period.
It was a diet that consisted of white rice, which I'm a huge advocate for.
Well, then you're a fucking idiot. We already knew that, but there's another reason why you are a fucking idiot.
Table sugar, refined table sugar, and fruit juice, and a multivitamin. Nothing else, no oils, no fats, no protein, nothing.
Right. So that alleviated the Randall cycle issue, and thus those people were able to strip weight, fat off their body relatively quickly. No surprises. Exactly what we'd expect.
And the intention was to help renal failure. He had basically patients who were towards the tail end of renal failure, experimented with them, put them on this diet, and all of them reversed their renal failure. The majority of them were obese and needed insulin, and they all ended up losing, on average, 140 pounds.
Yeah, no surprises for the exact reasons I've spoken about. All of those outcomes are all down to the alleviation of the negative effects of the way the Randall cycle had been activated in those individuals hitherto.
Became very skinny. Here are some pictures. You can see pictures. One individual, this man lost 285 pounds. This woman lost 135 pounds. This woman lost 115 pounds.
Yes, no surprises. What's your point?
And not only did it work for diabetes and insulin resistance and obesity and metabolic disorder, but it also worked for things like cardiovascular disease. As well
No surprises. None at all.
as psoriasis. And the reason why it worked was because just like the carnivore diet, it's an elimination diet.
No, that's got nothing to do with it. It's the Randall cycle issue.
Removes a critical macronutrient which is needed to develop properly. And so if you remove, like on the carnivore diet, everything, you remove carbs, you'll get skinny. But the opposite is also true. If you only do sugar and remove all fats and proteins, you'll also dwindle and get skinny.
That's exactly what the Randall cycle would expect and predict, and that's what we exactly see. What is your point?
I think that actually going the high sugar route is preferable in most cases.
Well, then you're an idiot, because a diet which is rich in carbohydrates and sugars and poor in fats and protein is destitute and will not lead you to long-term health. It cannot remotely subserve your needs. A diet which is rich in fat and protein and poor in carbohydrates absolutely can and does, whether it's cooked or not, you fucking moron.
Because you're not expending energy on digesting the cooked steak. And all of the energy is instead harnessed for detoxing and repairing the body.
Rubbish. That is not the mechanism by which these people lost the excess fat and alleviated the dysfunctions which are underpinned by inflammatory and autoimmune dysfunction. Randall cycle. That thing I don't understand.
Very interesting diet. Of course, today we also have glyphosate and the high prevalence of antibiotic use.
Yes, all bad things. All things that's very difficult to avoid in today's society, unfortunately. All bad things, they all exist nonetheless. Suck it up. Do your best.
People. And so they may actually just need to do the carnivore diet and consume a lot of gelatinous animal fat soups.
Gelatinous. In
order to heal the gut. In the earlier part of the 20th century, leaky gut was not as big of an issue. Now, again, these are my critiques of the cooked carnivore diet.
Well, you haven't actually provided anything whatsoever except your rancid, pustulous, monumentally inane, ill-educated opinions on a bunch of things. You've provided us absolutely nothing that would change our minds on any aspect of anything whatsoever.
What I am an advocate for is a raw food diet.
Well, then you're an idiot. Sorry. That's the way it is.
Very enthusiastic about raw foods. At a bare minimum, if people can do raw foods, I think the carnivore diet is great for therapeutic purposes, but long term it has issues.
No, it doesn't. Still.
For long term,
Richard Rodriguez, my friend that's been carnivorous, eating mostly cooked meat for 40 years. I'm sorry to tell you that apparently there are issues, son. Long term. Did you not get the memo? Perhaps. Sorry about that. I mean, we just needed this absolute genius, obviously, to tell us what the situation is and to put us right in the error of our ways. Okay, good.
Want to go and have an amazing life, have a lot of health and mental clarity.
And to support that, what he's done is given us the opinion of a dead actor, a bloke who did some science on some cats, and spoke about what a bunch of various tribes of people around the world currently do today. And stuff. Oh, don't forget, he also said that carnivores get all dried up, apparently. Okay. Wow.
Just feel amazing every single day. And a traditional diet doesn't work well for you, even after you have healed the gut, you want to go raw food, either raw primal, which is raw meat, raw eggs, raw butter.
So yet more opinions from someone who has absolutely no business having an opinion or espousing an opinion in this field because he has no training, no credentials, no credibility, and no experience in research in this field. None at all. Why would we listen to your opinion on what you think we should eat based on everything we've seen here today and in the previous video? Incredible.
Raw dairy, raw cream, raw honey, etc. Or raw living food, which is a raw vegan diet, but it's different from like fruitarianism and all that. You're basically growing your own sprouts. You harvest those sprouts on the spot, put them into a salad, put dressing on it, and eat it. You get an amazing bioenergetic force from that.
No, you don't. Absolute rubbish. Again.
And the only people in the world teaching this stuff are the people at the Hippocrates Health Institute.
Oh, fuck. The Hypocrites Institute. Just to make absolutely certain that people understand what your level of credibility is, son. Go and do some research into that organization if you haven't already, boys and girls. You can do that by watching a number of videos I've made about things I've had to say on various topics over the years, both on my current existing YouTube offerings and also on my Odyssey platform, where many of my legacy videos, all of them in fact, are still available for your viewing pleasure. Go and check those out and you'll learn a lot about the Hypocrites Institute and about how credible they are not. Okay, what's next?
And the reason why I'm a big advocate of raw food is because I've tried.
It's because you are a fucking idiot. You are an imbecile. You are a moron. That is why.
These raw food diets, and they're by far superior to everything else.
No, they are not. False.
And I feel amazing on them. And the individuals who advocate these diets look and feel amazing and have amazing.
The hypocrites. So you don't have the faculty of vision, son, either. Clearly, the faculty of thought, you don't have. The faculty of vision, you clearly don't have. The faculty of reason, I'm not going to say it abandoned you because it's clear that you've never actually had it at all. Wow. Poor show.
Energy, Arginus and Brian.
Yeah, a dead actor, yep. Now, Brian Clement, another actor, but not a dead one. Brian Clement, who was ordered to stop illegally practicing medicine. Brian Clement, who was ordered to stop claiming he had a PhD because of the source of said PhD, it being a diploma mill in the West Indies somewhere. That Brian Clement. Seriously? Okay, fine.
But this clip, Bart says when someone advocates a certain diet, you should judge their appearance when they advocate a diet. Well, look at Bart. He's
Yep.
Now again,
and that's n equals 1. Let's line up all these hypocrites from the Hypocrites Institute and line them up against a panel of people that support the carnivore diet. It's clear which side wins on more than n equals 1. Absolutely clear, no question.
Point was always that the carnivore diet is therapeutic, but it is not optimal long-term.
And you haven't established that posit. You've given your opinion on it, your vacuous, mindless, childlike opinion, based on absolutely nothing whatsoever. You've failed utterly to support it with any form of empirical support of any kind. You have failed, again, Varis, completely in the most destitute fashion possible.
And I hope I have made my point clear.
You haven't. You've espoused an opinion, which is worth nothing.
This video, okay? We do have a need for carbohydrates.
No, we don't. Still, none at all, not 1 gram ever. False, Varis. Completely false. Demonstrably false. Absolutely false. No question.
Physiology is not only adapted to it, but can thrive off of it.
No, we still don't need any carbohydrates at all in the diet. None at all. You're still wrong. 0 points for you.
When we do not include carbohydrates for a very long time, people can crash. Excessive
False. False again.
cooked meat has a lot of toxicity.
No, it doesn't.
Many indigenous cultures consume lots of carbohydrates
So what?
or raw dairy to buffer the problems
No, that's not why they do it.
from cooked meat toxicity, such as the iron and cauterized minerals,
No, false again. That's your guess. Speculation.
buffered by the alkaline reserve minerals such as
You
calcium.
don't even understand acid-base control, Varis, clearly. So shut your fucking ignorant pie hole, basically. You're just a boy with absolutely no knowledge, background, experience, or wisdom in this field whatsoever. You are a child in short pants. Go and do your homework. Help your mummy with the dishes. Do some useful service to your community in some way. But get your ass off the internet and stop wasting everybody's time with your ridiculous fucking nonsense.
Calcium and magnesium in carbohydrates or healthy carbohydrates
There
or
are no such thing as healthy carbohydrates in the diet. Doesn't exist.
raw dairy. Carnivores and elimination diet, just the same
No, it isn't.
way Walter Kempner's high sugar diet was an elimination diet, and they
No, that's not the point.
lost weight and put many diseases into remission.
Yes, because of the alleviation of the Randall cycle underpinnings of those conditions in the first instance. Yes.
Showed Francis Pottinger studies
On cats, yes.
where the cooked meat cats all had atrophied glands.
Yes, because cats aren't evolved for eating cooked meat. Human beings are. So fuck off, idiot.
People may say, well, I give my house cat chow and cooked meat, but keep in mind, when you leave your house cat outside, it does go hunt birds, mice, rodents, and lizards, and it has some raw food there. And I think I've made a pretty good, clear argument here.
No, you haven't. You've espoused an opinion, a mindless opinion, which is supported by absolutely no science whatsoever. None at all. Nothing but erroneous nonsense, misrepresentations, and outright lies. You're a desperate, pathetic little child. Go and do something useful. The rest of you, join me next time when someone else will be wrong on interwebs, because there's a lot of it going on this week in the first week of the year, isn't there? Yes. See you then. Ciao for now.